So here we're going to look at defining a retail pharmacy business. We're going to identify who can own a registered pharmacy and look at the list of titles which are restricted to use by pharmacists only. Now, a pharmacy business is somewhere where medicinal products should be sold or supplied by retail unless they're subject to some exemption. The business that operates from a registered pharmacy is called a retail pharmacy business. And the law relating to the operation of the activities of this business is contained in the Medicines Act 1968 and the Human Medicines Regulation 2012. Now, what do we mean by retail sale? Now, that's the sale of a substance to a person who buys it other than to sell it, supply it, administer it, or cause it to be administered in the course of a business. Retail supply is supply otherwise than a sale of a substance or article to a person who buys it other than to sell it, supply it, administer, or cause it to be administered in the course of a business. Now that sounds a bit confusing, but what it can be really encapsulated by is an example that the supply of a P medicine or a POM, which are P being a pharmacy medicine, or a POM, which is a prescription only medicine, against an NHS prescription is not a retail sale. It's a sale, it's a supply against a prescription. But such a supply is regarded as being made in circumstances corresponding to retail sale. So it looks like something that is a retail sale, but in fact is a retail supply. So who can own a retail pharmacy business? Well, we've got pharmacists, a partnership of pharmacists, a body corporate, and a representative of a pharmacist. So individual pharmacists, they can own a retail pharmacy business. The part of that business which concerns the retail sale of medicines must have a responsible pharmacist. This can either be the owning pharmacist or the pharmacist that they employ. It doesn't have to be the one who owns it. In England, Wales and Northern Ireland, all partners must be a pharmacist if it's a partnership of pharmacists who are running that retail pharmacy business. In Scotland, only one partner has to be a pharmacist. The part of the retail pharmacy business which concerns the retail sale of medicines must have a responsible pharmacist. This again can be one of the owning pharmacists or a pharmacist that they employ. Now, body corporate, so that could be a company, for example, the large chains like Boots and Lloyd's. And the business of keeping, preparing and dispensing P and POM medicines must be under the management of a superintendent pharmacist. The responsible pharmacist at each premises is subject to the directions of the superintendent pharmacist. So it's a different structure to the previous the partnerships and the pharmacist held retail pharmacy business. Now, in the case of a representative of a pharmacist, when would you have a representative? So in the case that there's a death of a pharmacist, if a pharmacist goes bankrupt, or if a pharmacist is deemed mentally unfit. Now, the representative is the executor of a deceased pharmacist. They are also the trustee in bankruptcy, and they are a receiver of a mentally unfit pharmacist. The business can be run for 5 years following the death of a pharmacist, or 3 years in all the other circumstances, but the pharmacy must still have a responsible pharmacist. So how does the retail pharmacy business operate? The premises, first and foremost, needs to be registered with the regulator, so the GPHC, and that register is compiled annually and a fee has to be paid. The premises are required to meet standards laid down by the regulator, and also the premises must have a responsible pharmacist in charge. Now, the GPHC have brought out guidance specifically for responsible pharmacists and describing the guidance around what it means and what needs to be adhered to. But basically, a responsible pharmacist must ensure the secure and safe and effective running of the pharmacy where medicines are concerned. They have to display a notice that meets the legal requirements. They have to complete a pharmacy record that again meets the legal requirements, and they must establish, if they haven't already, and maintain the pharmacy procedures. If there is more than one pharmacist appointed to the pharmacy at any one time, only one can be designated the responsible pharmacist. If there's an overlap in shifts, one pharmacist needs to stop being the responsible pharmacist before another can take on the position. Also, a responsible pharmacist cannot be responsible for more than one pharmacy premises at one time. So, in consideration of the notice that needs to be displayed, it's a legal requirement. So, every time a pharmacist becomes the responsible pharmacist, they need to put up their notice. And on that notice, it needs to have their name, their GPHC registration number, and a statement to claim that you are now, in fact, in charge of the pharmacy at that time. The second thing that needs to be adhered to is the pharmacy records. So this is a record that can be paper-based or electronic, and it needs to include the name of the pharmacist that's becoming the responsible pharmacist, their registration number, the date and time when that responsible pharmacist took up the post, and the date and time when they ceased to be the responsible pharmacist. If that pharmacist who is the responsible pharmacist is absent from the premises, they need to also record the date of the absence, the time at which they left the pharmacy, and the time when they came back. Now, the owner or the superintendent must keep this record for 5 years, and it must be available at the pharmacy to which it relates to. The responsible pharmacist is also accountable for the pharmacy procedures. Now, this includes arrangements to secure that medicinal products are ordered, stored, prepared, sold by retail, supplied in circumstances corresponding to retail, delivered and disposed of in a safe and effective manner. So really the whole process around the medicines is the responsibility of that responsible pharmacist. They also have the responsibility to maintain the records about all of these activities. They are responsible for staff who aren't a pharmacist in the circumstances where they give advice about medicinal products. They have the responsibility to identify members of staff who are competent to perform specified tasks related to the pharmacy business, so that they identify who can do what within the pharmacy and have the required qualifications. They also have to ensure there are arrangements in place that can be applied during an absence of the responsible pharmacist. They also need to be aware of the steps that need to be taken when there is a change in responsible pharmacist at the premises. They need to know about the procedure which is to be followed if a complaint is made about the pharmacy business, and also about the procedure if an incident occurs which may indicate that the pharmacy business is not running in a safe and effective manner, and also about the manner in which changes to the pharmacy procedures are to be notified to staff. So really, the responsible pharmacist has to have an in-depth knowledge about the running and the general daily operation and activities that are occurring within the pharmacy and the employees. Now, going back to the matter of an absence, a responsible pharmacist can be absent from the pharmacy, but it's for a maximum of 2 hours in any one day, which means a 24-hour period, which is from midnight to midnight. Now, they can only be absent if the pharmacy can continue to run safely and effectively, that they remain contactable at all times, and that they are also able to return within reasonable promptness back to the pharmacy. There aren't any restrictions as to why a responsible pharmacist may be absent, but possible reasons might include meetings with local GPs, undertaking domiciliary visits with patients in their homes, or to participate in continuing professional development for training purposes maybe. Now, the following activities can take place in the absence of a responsible pharmacist. So the sale of general sales list medicines over the counter, and also the staff can take in prescriptions. Now, activities that cannot take place in the absence of a responsible pharmacist unless another pharmacist is present is the supply of GSL medicines against a prescription, the sale of a P medicine, and the handing out of bagged and checked medicines to patients or delivery drivers. Now, there is a more in-depth guidance from the GPHC, so I would recommend that you have a look at that. Now, if we just look at pharmacies, the premises, so I mentioned before that pharmacies need to be registered with the registrar of the GPHC, and applications to register have to be made in writing, and there's an annual fee that is payable to the GPHC. The GPHC sets standards for these pharmacies, these registered pharmacies, and they are available on the GPHC website. A GPHC inspectorate visit occurs, and they inspect registered premises against these standards, and they cover 5 principles. They look at the governance that's taking place within the pharmacy, they look at the staff competence, they look at the environment, they look at service delivery, and they look at equipment and facilities. So they're basically ensuring that everything is up to standard to ensure that safe and effective sale and supply of medicines can take place within that premises. Now, looking at the titles, so the term pharmacy, it's a restricted title, which basically means it can only lawfully be used for a registered pharmacy or the pharmacy department in a hospital or health centre. Now, the terms chemist or dispensing chemist, they're more traditional terms. They are also restricted and can only be used by a registered pharmacy. Hospital pharmacies, they're not required to register their premises from where they sell or supply medicines to patients under their care. They do tend to have inpatient and outpatient manufacturing and dispensing for patients under their care within the hospital, and those facilities are exempt from the Medicines Act requirements relating to registered premises. So again, they don't need to be registered. But many hospital pharmacies do register their premises, and that allows hospital pharmacies to dispense prescriptions from outside the hospital, so NHS prescriptions. They can also sell P-medicines to visitors and to staff, and they take advantage of the exemptions to the licensing requirements for selling, supplying, manufacturing, and wholesale dealing of medicines. Now, if the hospital pharmacy is registered, then it must have a responsible pharmacist. If it's not registered, then it does not require a responsible pharmacist. So I've taken you through what retail pharmacy businesses do. They sell medicines, and they must be registered as pharmacies. Hospital pharmacies don't have to be registered, but many are. Pharmacies can be owned by pharmacists, partnerships, bodies corporate, or representatives of partnerships, of pharmacists, sorry. There are detailed requirements relating to the registering of premises, and they, as I said, can be seen on the GPHC website. Certain titles can only be used for registered pharmacies, and there are detailed guidance about the responsibilities and duties of the responsible pharmacist at any time.